Melmoth the Wanderer by Charles Robert Maturin. Hello and welcome to a screencast about Melmoth the Wanderer. We will first give you a few information about Charles Robert Maturin himself and about his works. Then we will focus on some general information about the book. After that, I will talk about the historical context. Jan will then go on with a synopsis and summary of the plot. After that, he will introduce some information about the literary genre and Maturin's inspiration. I will then explain some of the main themes in the novel, and to end the presentation, Jan will talk about the influence on literature. Charles Robert Maturin was born on the 25th September in 780 in Dublin and died with only 44 years of age on the 30th October 1824. He was a clergyman and a writer of Gothic plays and novels. His best known work is the book we are going to talk about, Melmoth the Wanderer. Maturin was descended from Huguenots who found shelter on Ireland. For those who don't know, Huguenots were a religious group of French Protestants who held to the Reformed of Calvinist tradition or Protestantism. One fun fact, one of the Huguenots was Gabriel Jacques Maturin. He became Dean of the St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin after Jonathan Swift in 1745. Charles Robert Maturin attended the Trinity College. In 1803, Maturin was ordained as curate of Loughrea in County Galway. Shortly after that, he moved back to Dublin, then as a curate of St. Peter's Church. A curate is a priest of the lowest rank. There, he lived in York Street with his father William, who was a post office official, and his mother Fidelia Watson. On the 7th October 1804, he married the singer Henrietta Kingsbury and had 4 children. Now to Maturin's works. He published his first 3 works, which were Gothic novels, under the pseudonym Dennis Jasper Murphy. They were critical and commercial failures. His play Bertram, however, was way more successful and even staged in 1816, but there weren't only positive recommendations. A man called Samuel Taylor Coleridge publicly denounced the play as dull and loathsome, going nearly so far as to describe it as atheistic. The Church of Ireland took notes of these and earlier criticism and then declined him any further clerical advancement. Beside Melmoth the Wanderer, Maturin produced several other novels, some also on Irish subjects, for example Paul the Albigness, a historical novel which featured werewolves. Now some general information on the book. Melmoth the Wanderer, published in 1820, is a horror novel of the Irish playwright Charles Robert Maturin. The novel is a synthesis of the writing styles of terror and Gothic horror. Gothic literature emerged as a means of investigating the nature. It is seen as the best English horror novel of dark romanticism. The whole novel is nearly 800 pages long and is composed of a series of nested stories, which is by the way common for Gothic novels, and it's gradually revealing the story of Melmoth's life. So Maturin uses the narrative device of telling stories within stories. The historical context. As said, Melmoth the Wanderer was written in 1820. That was 12 years after the publication of the first part of Goethe's Faust. At this time, Gothic novels had begun to shift from the original form of romances, which depended on dark and terrible settings, to a more psychological brand of horror. The novel offers social commentary on early 19th century England and denounces Roman Catholicism in favor of the virtues of the Protestantism. Melmoth the Wanderer is characteristic for the developing Protestant, Romantic and Gothic trend towards the psychological and turning inward of narrative in 19th century literature. One possible reason why Gothic writing was so popular in Ireland is that it is a genre peculiarly obsessed with the question of identity. Gothic is particularly concerned with representation of the fragmented subject, and the Irish, as we know, had to tackle a great deal of such fragmentation in the 18th, 19th, 20th century or even earlier. Because of its long history of invasions from the Danish, Norman, Cromwellian, Scottish and English, and being suppressed by the English colonies, they had a crisis of identity. One example of suppression are the Penal Laws, which established a supremacy of the Protestant minority and stole so many rights from the Irish Catholics. They were not allowed to vote, for example.
plot of Melmoth the Wanderer could be described as stories within stories. Like a matryoshka, a Russian doll, there are plots within plots within plots. In that, the links between the stories, as well as the passage of time throughout the novel, can become quite unclear. However, there's a single thread tying everything together. Melmoth the Wanderer, with his devilish abilities, appears in a variety of accounts throughout the centuries. The novel consists of a frame story in which the stories within stories are embedded. They include the manuscript left by Stanton, the tale of the Spaniard, the tale of the Indians, the tale of Guzman's family, and the lover's tale. The frame story of the novel begins with John Melmoth, a student in Dublin, who is visiting his dying uncle, whose estate he then later will inherit. There he finds a portrait of a mysterious ancestor of his called Melmoth the Wanderer. This painting is dated 1646, and at his uncle's funeral, John hears the story about his ancestor Melmoth, who is still believed to be alive. That the different stories about Melmoth the Wanderer that are embedded in the frame story follow. In all these sub-stories, Melmoth discovers someone with an overwhelming dilemma and offers them salvation for the price of their soul. If they were to accept his help, they would trade places with him in his pact with the devil for a longer life. Ultimately, every single person Melmoth tries to sway defies him, and by association, deal with the devil. Melmoth the Wanderer is assigned to the genre of Gothic novel. It therefore deals with macabre and morbid topics and incites a sense of mysterious imagination. It also encompasses the environments that have become associated with Gothic novels. Secret underground labyrinths, dungeons, cathedrals, and dark and muddled timelines. According to Maturin himself, Melmoth the Wanderer had its origin in one of his own sermons. He said, "The hint of this romance or tale was taken from a passage in one of my sermons. The passage is this: At this moment is there one of us present, however we may have departed from the Lord, disobeyed his will, and disregarded his word, is there one of us who would at this moment accept all that man could bestow, or earth afford, to resign the hope of his salvation? No, there is not one, not such a fool on earth, were the enemy of mankind to traverse it with the offer." Apart from that, Maturin used the rich folklore of Ireland as inspiration in this novel. Also, parallels to other literary works and tales such as Faust, The Wandering Jew, Paradise Lost, to the heroes of Byron's works, and so on, can be found.
One of the main themes of the novel is the immutability of evil. This is expressed through the unusual structure of stories nested within stories. The structure is similar to the Russian matryoshka dolls. At the center of every story we find Melmoth once again as a mortal stand-in for Satan himself. There are many theories that Melmoth is the Homo erectus to the fully functional Dracula that would come later in 1897 from the pen of Bram Stoker. Superstition is also an aspect in Melmoth the Wanderer. This theme is introduced through the doctors that John Melmoth meets upon his return to his uncle's shambling estate. The doctress is a self-appointed healer, or in other words, a witch. That reference to superstition is a reminder of the impulse behind Gothic aesthetics, which is the investigation of an infinite number of other infinite things. Melmoth the Wanderer shows us a damning picture of Christianity and the horrors of the Inquisition that devastated the lives of millions with its irrational cruelty. The greater populace governed under the Inquisition operated within a hierarchy that included the Church of Rome. Those who had power were either under the thumb of Catholicism, like the King of Spain, others are overcome by cynicism or tribalism and reject reason in favor of superstition and greed. Melmoth the Wanderer displays how the Catholic Church suppressed the people. Melmoth tried to convince the people to trade their souls and escape their bad situations, but the people denied and stayed truthful in dissent and were therefore saved. In the end, Melmoth says, "I have traversed the world in search, and no one to gain that world would lose his own soul." Another theme is family ties and inheritance. The story begins with John Melmoth learning of his mysterious ancestor while visiting his dying uncle. In the whole story of the novel, family ties are threatened by Melmoth, for example when he kills Isidora's brother and interferes with her father's plans to marry her to another man. There's also the Guzman's family. It is not important who the family is. What is important is that they were near to meeting a terrible fate, but then were saved just in time by money. This indicates that money will save you against the evil, and that is exactly what the Church has always told people, to make money. The whole story of Melmoth the Wanderer suggests that family ties are impossible to escape, both beyond graves and beyond personal choice or morality.
Melmoth the Wanderer has captivated the minds of some of literature's biggest names like Honoré de Balzac, Oscar Wilde, H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, and Baudelaire. Balzac was so enamored by Melmoth that he believed Melmoth should assume a place between Goethe's Faust and Lord Byron's Manfred. Balzac also wrote Melmoth Reconciled, a follow-up story to Maturin's novel. Oscar Wilde, during his travels after being released from prison, even called himself Sebastian Melmoth. He derived this pseudonym from Saint Sebastian and obviously from Maturin's title character. A little fun fact on that note, Charles Maturin was Oscar Wilde's great uncle. Another point is, quoting Zach Calm, that you'll find Melmoth as perhaps the Homo erectus to the fully functional Dracula that will come later in 1897 from the pen of Bram Stoker. So Melmoth could be a step in the evolution of vampire stories as we know them today.